this is Joseph Rosales, and welcome to Business in the New Normal. I'm here with my co-host Ike Devji, and our fantastic guest that we're going to introduce in a minute. Ike, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Joseph. Thank you.
Good, good. Well, if I have a little bit different lighting today and everything, a little different background, I'm in Palm Springs celebrating a birthday, well, really an anniversary, but it's kind of a birthday of my life kind of changed in mass when I married my wife 34 years ago. And so we're here celebrating our anniversary, and like birthdays, we usually end up taking a few more days than just the one day of the actual event. So we're here, and it's beautiful. Same weather as we have in Phoenix, and so it's been a great trip so far. And nice thing, it's only 3.5-4 hours from home, so that's nice by car. We always like to start with a little bit of background about what's going on out there. And as our listeners know, our purpose for this program is to share balanced information with our people that are in business, our listeners that are in business, to help them make more informed decisions about what's going on in business today. As we all know, the world has changed dramatically, for some more than others. Some people are thriving, some people are barely surviving. And we started this program about 16, 17 weeks ago to provide that kind of information. Apolitical in a sense, because we don't really talk too much about politics and things like that, but we're really talking about business, business and business ideas that can help people to grow. Ike is a wealth and asset protection attorney based out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I am a business consultant and performance coach based also in that area of Arizona. And so we have a lot of different things going on in our businesses, and we see a lot of opportunity to help people to not just survive, but thrive in this challenging environment. So Ike, what's going on in your world these days?
We are busy. It's the end of the year. And so there are a lot of folks who have planned ahead and wanted to make significant changes to their legal lives and their legal planning, if you will, before the end of the year. Now that we have a president-elect, some of the fears or concerns about what this administration's estate tax regime might look like are more concrete for some folks. So they're making large wealth transfers now to take advantage of the current law, which allows, for instance, a married couple to transfer about $23 million worth of their net worth free of any estate tax. So folks are working hard and looking at that issue. Of those who have that problem, it's a good problem to have, and unfortunately not every American has it, but those that do are looking at that. We are also seeing a lot of activity with business sales, transitions, exit plans, all of the above. So we are seeing folks who are retiring from their business and taking advantage of everything from current tax law to making these moves to assuage their fears of what may be ahead, since we are still very much in the coronavirus COVID-19 business environment. So some folks are saying, I don't know what the future holds, I'm ready to sell. And we have some other folks that have, fortunately for them, are in business channels that are very profitable, and those folks are expanding. So we're seeing a little bit of everything, but the rush is on because there are a limited number of business days left in the year. And, a lot of the good people that I work with on the legal side and in other related businesses are booked well into January already.
Yeah, it seems like there was a lot of pent up strategy to wait until whoever got elected, and then people were rushing to the door to try and figure out what to do now. And in some cases, it's pretty tight timelines for everybody, I guess, right?
Yes, and unfortunately, not everybody's going to get in or get the help they should have.
Yeah.
But the good news is there is still time and there is still opportunity for a lot of folks.
Good, good. Well, on our end of the business, with our business is helping people to grow their businesses, and in the end, you do that through people. And we're seeing a lot of consumer confidence issues still in businesses. This hotel that we're at here, the Marriott Palm Springs, is 80% full, but that's on a 50% capacity. Because by law they can't max out, and it's interesting. We were talking about it here before that in California they're making you wear a mask laying at the pool, and if you're walking, you're exercising. Where people see people walking on the tracks and riding their bikes, and they're all wearing masks. And it's interesting because we've talked about masks for a lot. We spent a lot of time talking about masks in the past, and whether you fall on the mask side or no mask side. There are mandates and there are requirements. And so it's interesting because in business, we're seeing our customers, our clients are still struggling with their customers wearing or not wearing masks, and the whole reopening of business and strengthening of business. And now we're seeing this second wave come into the United States, and it's a real issue because consumers they don't know what to do. And there's so much different perspectives, and there's so much different ideas out there that you should or shouldn't wear a mask, or the virus is challenging, or it's not, it's fake, who knows. And I know what I know, and I know what I believe, but in the end it's challenging out there. So we always encourage businesses to reach out to resources like us, to reach out and ask those questions, because we work really hard. I know you and I both work really hard at being informed, really hard at being balanced in our approach to things. The new business, the new normal group site that we have on LinkedIn, and it's called Business in the New Normal.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because we converted it from, you had a site that we converted recently. It was previously called Reopening Business in America Safely. And there's so much good content there. Content that we pull from other places just to keep people informed. Because today, as you know, we talk about, if you're listening to CNN, you get one story. If you're listening to Fox News, you get another story. And then you try and blend it in by listening to the national news, and you get some other story. And news programs anymore are more opinion programs than they are news programs. So we have to be really careful, because how we make decisions as business owners and as professionals is dramatically affected by what other people say. And if you're listening to the wrong information, you might make the wrong decision. So it is a challenge, but thank goodness we're moving through, and maybe there's a vaccine coming. Unfortunately, 50% of people aren't going to take it, and we're going to end up with a different set of issues. It's easy to see when somebody's wearing a mask, right? Not so easy to see if somebody's been vaccinated or not. So that's another conversation for another day that we'll have. So anything else you want to add before we introduce our guest this afternoon?
No, I think we've got a good start, and I'm anxious to see how our guests can help us all improve what we're doing and think outside the box and how we're working, not just the digital nomads that I think many people might associate her with. I think this applies to a lot of us. So, I mean, look at all the professionals that I deal with on my side of the business, whether they're attorneys or financial or accountants. I mean, everybody's working differently. And the idea of the office, as much as the physical structure, I think has been exploded.
Yeah.
And that is, it's stressful for some people, and other people it's creating more creativity than we've seen out of them in a long time.
Yeah. Well, our guest last week, Julie Fletcher, works in the financial industry in the bank, had some amazing stories of people that have pivoted. I'm sure that Lydia is going to have some great stories for us as well. Our guest today is Lydia Lee, and I'll read her bio in a second, but I want to share how I met her. My assistant, Alex Beakley, had interviewed Lydia several months ago on her own podcast. And I was so impressed when I saw that interview. I reached out to Lydia and said, I need you to come on our program and share your expertise and your passions with our guests to help people that are trying to pivot or transition or grow in their business. And so it was interesting because she agreed to come on, and she's in Bali, by the way. This beautiful island look that she's got, that's on purpose, because she's in a beautiful island of Bali. And I'm going to put my glasses on so I can read properly her introduction. She's a work reinvention coach and small business strategy at a company that she founded called Screw The Cubicle. I love that name. because sometimes people just say, screw the cubicle. Let me start my own business. Since 2013, she's helped hundreds of people transition out of the golden corporate handcuffs and develop successful self-employment strategies and create an impact in the work that they want to do. Her mission has been to support entrepreneurs and change makers to find direction, pathway, courage, and clarity to make their businesses a 100% expression of their gifts, values, and personalities. Lydia Lee, welcome to the program.
Thank you so very much for having me. And on a time that we're both awake, which is usually hard for me on this side of the world sometimes to coordinate time zones, but both of us look like we're in sunlight. So this is good for video.
Well, it's 3 o'clock here in Palm Springs. It's 4 o'clock in Phoenix, and I believe it's in this
7
in the afternoon, and you're 7 in the morning there in Bali.
The next day in the future.
Yeah, isn't that wild that we can actually talk to in the future? That's a concept that is so hard to grasp sometimes. I'm actually talking to you tomorrow. Love it.
Yes, exactly. And Wednesday looks good. We haven't self-imploded. The world is still alive. It's good. Good day.
That's good. That's awesome. Well, listen, Lydia, thank you again so much for coming on. I wanted to kind of start off with just tell us a little bit about you and your background and your business before we get into some other questions.
Yeah, so thank you for the introduction. That was perfect. So I've had this business for the last 7.5 years. I've also been living in Bali for the last 7 years. So it's been kind of an interesting, life in Vancouver, that's where I'm from before, versus life in Bali has been quite different. And it isn't easy to adapt to, of course, a different type of country, different type of culture, and how a business operates remotely. But Screw the Cubicle actually was not my first business. I actually had a consulting business in my previous industry, which was in international education. So I was a business development director, and then I started my own boutique agency, partnering with actually my ex-employer and people I knew from the industry. And that was sort of an easy business to start. It's what I call a transition business. You already have the context, you built social equity, easy one to start. And so Screw the Cubicle was actually just a blog. It was a blog to be honest, documenting my identity crisis, transitioning from my corporate job. My parents and my family's from Malaysia originally. And if anyone listening has Asian moms and parents, you understand the explanations you have to give when you give up a 6-figure job and a partnership and all these things. And they go, what are you doing with your life? Are you having a midlife crisis too early? These questions you can't answer for them right away. And I thought, well, I'm just going to direct my mother and everybody else who's asking, what are you doing with your life, to this blog. And it was never meant to be monetized, to be honest. I never looked at it at anything but just a bit of an online journal until people started reading it. And the first moment that actually was a lawyer from Toronto who messaged me on my website and said, loved what you've been talking about, what you've been talking about mid-career changes and so forth. Do you coach people to make this transition of all the things you've talked about? And then I remembered going, what is a coach? And I literally had to Google it. That was the milestone of when I started to even entertain potentially a different interest perhaps, or a different career path for myself. And so that is kind of how I got started. But yes, in the last 7 years, I've been working a lot with corporate professionals, usually in mid-career, and also people that have started a new business. They're interested in solopreneurship, small businesses or micro businesses, and they're also interested in aligning the way that they work in that business and how they design that model of a business to really suit their lifestyle choices, right? So I'm glad you mentioned, Ike, that it is true that when people look at my brand and they see me in Bali, it's very easy to think, oh, she's a digital nomad and that's what she does, right? And that's the buzzword, that the new hashtag, isn't it? That's really popular on Instagram. You see photos of people on their laptops in a hammock and at the beach, and this is right, the millennial dream. And then a lot of people go, well, that's not for me. I don't want to travel that much. That sounds like a nightmare. And though I do enjoy travel, and that might change as I grow a family and so forth, right? I think my biggest message behind my work is about, whatever that autonomy that you do want. Like a lot of my clients are moms, and they don't want to worry when they go on mat leave if their job will be taken by somebody else, or afraid to say they're looking to get pregnant in the next 2 years and that job to be threatened in some way. They want some autonomy over, I can still work and have a baby, or you just realize that you need more balance. You need more time off actually in the age you're in. Whatever that motivation is, I think everyone has a different motivation, right? To have that balance, and whatever lifestyle choice you want is what you want. And I think there's an interesting opportunity in the time that we're living in, with technology, with a larger global access, to clients beyond our neighborhoods and our doorstep, that we can do this a lot more than in, my parents' days, where these sorts of concepts were never even an option, right? So yeah, so that's a little bit about my work.
Yeah,
That's
it's
really
interesting. Go ahead, please, Aaron.
We see the majority of business owners, executives, working people, whether you're employed or self-employed, tend to structure their life around their profession. And what I'm hearing from you is that you're helping people structure their profession to suit their life.
Yes.
It's an interesting reversal, and maybe a better way that we should all be approaching it.
Well, let me tell you, it wasn't something, to be honest, Ike, that came to me when I started Screw the Cubicle. I think the motivation in the beginning was just supporting people to kind of repurpose their expertise. If you've been a lawyer for 20 years, you've been a doctor for 20 years. I got a lot of people in very traditional, career paths that they couldn't see anything beyond that one trajectory, and it is hard. There's no guidebook for craft your own career, right? But it's really easy when you're on a traditional career path just to see other lawyers, right? Or other doctors ahead of you. And that's the path that I probably need to be going on. And so when I first started, it was a lot around that creativity of how do we use your skills in a different capacity? How do we use your skills as a lawyer without being a lawyer? Right? And say that's the title, because people are very attached to job titles. Is what we say at dinner parties, is what identifies us in society, where we stand and position ourselves. So letting go of a title like that can be quite traumatizing for people to let go of, and so that was sort of the work in the beginning. But as I evolved in my business, and that I was very grateful to be having a remote business and, learning how to be location independent, et cetera. But I would have to say, I too, fell into the trap of needing to work myself to the bone, right? Blood, sweat, and tears in order to bring it to a level that I believed was successful, right? For my niche and my industry. And then completely sacrificing what the whole point was, which was not to work, 80-hour weeks. Like I did in corporate. I ended up working way more and having way more anxiety, and suffered a second burnout in my business. I had 2 burnouts in my entire life, once in corporate and once in my business. And I remember when I experienced the second one, I went, how did we get here again? I'm in control. I'm supposed to have that autonomy. And yet somehow I've brought the corporate mentality into my business. And that was something I had to really navigate and take a sabbatical from my business to think about, what happened, to get me to this point. Is the model of business I'm building even the model I'm supposed to be building? Or did I do that because other coaches and other people in my industry is doing it the same way? And I had to be honest with myself at that time. It was a checklist, it was a thing that you do in this way. And I was imitating almost how I climbed the corporate ladder in corporate and doing the same thing in my business. And I think it was after that burnout that I started to reimagine and almost challenge maybe what the status quo was of how I define my own version of success. What my type of business looks like, which may not be this kind of big business, big empire. And that was what I was doing, to build a big empire. But really in my heart of hearts, what I really wanted was a micro business. I wanted to be a solopreneur. I didn't want to manage people, and I had a team to manage, and I was a horrendous manager. And I realized that was not a strong point. Love working with people, love collaborating with people. And now I hire very high-end specialists and contractors to work on projects, but I don't want to manage a day-to-day team. I don't like meetings, I don't like any of those things, right? So I had to really kind of take a look at all, almost like peel back the layers of my business with a fine-tooth comb, and start to actually extract things and become more of an essentialist rather than doing all the things, and appearing big, but actually feeling very overworked and underwhelmed, by my own business.
I have to say, I'm sitting here listening to you, and you are speaking to millions of people that are stuck in a company that they created that might be small but has that corporate mentality of you got to go, go, go. You got to sell, sell, sell. You got to attract more people, close more people, sell more people, hire more people, train more people, all of that. And I had my company at one point, 40 people, 30 in the field, 10 in my office. We're running all these Fortune 100 companies through our programs. It's great. And then it's like, wait a minute. I'm traveling 200, 220 nights a year. I don't see my son. And at one point, my wife said to me, my aha moment was when my wife, who I adore, came to me and said, you say you're going to travel more or less every year, and every year you travel more. And here was the word. She said, I'm getting tired of it. And I heard her. And I responded. And it took me 2 years to renegotiate my way through all the things I needed to do and downsize my company. And now it's myself, an assistant, and somebody does our books and things, and it's pretty simple. And I'm not sure actually where I want to go. How many people do I want to have? And do I really enjoy, like as you, helping people and strategizing, collaborating, and all of those things. That's what I enjoy. And I don't have time to do that when I'm having meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, getting my people moving and going in the right direction and leading. And I love leadership. I mean, I just wrote the book on leadership, The Leader of You. So I love leadership, but I like helping other people to become more effective leaders. And so it's interesting. So many things to unpack in just the few minutes that you've been talking. If we had a couple of hours, we would probably do that. But I want to get to a couple of things that I think are really important for our listeners, and then you can expand however you want to. We've been in this new normal for several months now, and so what are some of the things that you've seen, you've had to adapt to, or you've had to help clients adapt to in this thing that we all call the new normal? What are some of those things that you've seen and you're going to take even forward after the pandemic?
Yeah, this pandemic has been kind of what I believe is a bit of a catalyst for change. In a lot of ways, humans are designed to where we're motivated to change only when something kind of blows up a little bit. It sort of happened when I left corporate. Something had to happen. I had a health scare, in order for me to wake up and go, this isn't sustainable. And then for businesses, in a lot of ways, sometimes that happens as well, right? A wife telling you, I can't stand this anymore, and our marriage are on the rocks if you continue to do this, right? And there's a moment of pause, right? Or a necessary pause, perhaps, to reevaluate. And we don't do that sometimes mindfully. And so in a lot of ways, as much as the pandemic has caused tremendous loss, and, things that I wish didn't have to happen, but there's also I do see a silver lining in the event and in the circumstance that perhaps, this is an opportunity for us to really think about how we actually want to consciously, think about things, whether it's our life, whether it's what we value, whether it's what's important to our businesses, and what do we not want to go back into, even when life gets back to normal. Maybe it's not business as usual. Maybe it's not exactly how we did it before the pandemic, and perhaps we can evolve our businesses to what this new version, right, of ourselves, of our leadership, and what our business represents in the future. And so one of the big things that I've been working on during the pandemic for my business, and in return also a lot of the conversations and coaching sessions I've been having with my clients is, of course, when the pandemic first started, there was a panic. It was a moment of, God, it's so uncertain. I have no control, right, over what's going to happen, how people feel about the pandemic. I mean, I had a big 2-month pause, from my corporate clients, because they weren't going to invest at that point on coaching when they weren't sure if their jobs were secure, and so Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? If your survival is being threatened in some way, which is security, you don't spend money, right, to the next level of creativity and passion and so forth. So I had to sort of think about, what would I do during that time? Well, I don't want to abandon my clients and abandon my business just because people aren't buying in that 2-month period of time. What I can do is bring new meaning to that time. And that's the concept that I have around, how do we meet people where they're at? How do we meet people where currently, even though you're trying to say, yeah, you can take this moment and reinvent your work and reinvent your career, so you're not a slave to, that your security is only dictated by your boss when he believes you should be laid off or not. I can say that, but that isn't helpful at that point to shame people or guilt trip people into taking action, which is not the way that I like to market anyway. And so I had to kind of think about what are some interesting things. And it's very similar to what you guys are doing at the moment with, business in the new normal is I did 6 weeks of free training online, which is how to adapt to the ever-changing times of COVID-19, right? Split up some for business owners, which is how to pivot and adapt during times of change. What can we do with our existing assets, because it's very tempting to just build new things, build new offers, reinvent, complete everything, and then move into more stress, right? Rather than go, actually, how do I minimize my efforts? What do I focus on? Maybe I focus on one thing, that can really make a difference rather than 10 different offers, right? Or adapt to, sustaining the existing customers you've got instead of finding new ones during this time, right? And so that 2-month period was great because it actually, and what that 6-week event ended up doing was not to convince people to buy anything. It was to plant seeds, right? To plant seeds for them to harvest, if you will, in the near future. And that actually set the tone for my brand being positioned as a helpful resource, right? For people going through this time. And then also when it was time, for them to make a shift, when it was the right time to invest into their businesses and in themselves, I was, on top of mind, right? And I think that is a really great way to look at ever-changing times is really listen to your customers, listen to what they need, and look at ways that you can use your skill set, maybe not to do exactly what you did in the past with what you got paid to do, but really seeing how you can maybe teach a different area, right? Or shine more light in a different area that might actually be quite interesting to people and a different way to bring people in to your business.
Right. It's interesting because when you and I chatted before, you talked about sometimes people are in a place and they see this next opportunity and it's so big, it's so huge that they can't get there from here, so they do nothing. And one of the things that I think you're really clear on with your clients is bite-sized improvements, small incremental things. Talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, like I'm a huge believer in, goal setting is great. And I think we should have a vision, for our lives and where we want our businesses to go. It's sort of the holy grail of what we're working towards. But it's a big bite, isn't it? It's hard for most people to imagine a pathway to something that isn't happening in reality. It's just how our human brains work. It's like habits, right? In order to create behavior change and create habits that stick, we have to stick with tinier movements, right? And so my whole philosophy is about focusing on movements versus goals. And so for me, I define movements as goals you can actually control, right? Mm-hmm. Like you can imagine, I want a 7-figure business with this type of, assets and so forth. And yes, that's a great dream, but you can't control that because sometimes things like the pandemic happens, something could happen in your business or the climate changes somehow economically, right? Or there's a competitor in the marketplace that requires you to pivot some of your things to compete, right? And so these are things you cannot control, but what you can control is the movements you're making today, right? Adjustments you're making today, how you're positioning your brand, how are you retaining clients? What are the messages that you're putting out there? And even your habits of how you show up for your clients and your systems can be leading you, right, to the bigger goal. And those I think are more important because those are actual tangible things you can see right away. And that's really important for motivation. I think as business owners, if we don't celebrate, until the milestone of a particular revenue is made, we don't tend to be as driven, because it's such a faraway dream. And we also don't get really present into what's actually happening that could actually be taking us away from that goal. And they're very small. And that's why the pandemic has been kind of a blessing in disguise for me, because throughout that first 2 months of, a bit of a slump and a bit of a slow period, it gave me spaciousness to look at my business and say, if I want to maintain my sanity and my well-being throughout this time, which could last God knows until when, I need to simplify. I need to simplify my efforts. I need to uncomplicate some of the things that have felt like bottlenecks. And guess who was one of the bottlenecks? me, right? I was one of the bottlenecks because I'm a perfectionist. I'm a bit of a, high achiever in a lot of ways. And I can have a tendency for perfection and high quality, which is great for my clients. But at some points, that characteristic may not work, right? Especially when maintaining a business throughout a stressful time. So learning how to be a minimalist almost, in my business. And one of the great books I read last year, which really changed the way that I started thinking about my life and my business, is the book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And he has a really great way of explaining how to focus on what really matters, what really moves the needle for your business, and choosing one thing and doing that one thing really well instead of 15 different things and actually doing that at a 25% capacity, So bigger is not always better. That's sort of the big part that I realized from the pandemic. Better is better. So instead of building a bigger business, why don't we strive to build a better business? Something that we are excited to show up for every morning, something that lets us maybe have a 4-hour day rather than an 8-hour day. How do we adjust those ways we scale? How do we adjust our productivity? How do we adjust what's the right thing to focus on? And I think that's kind of the real work that has been, really a blessing, as I said, during this time.
That's another really interesting point you bring up there. Are many of the people, or is there more of one than the other in terms of, are the folks that you are working with, coaching, advising, are many of them using their existing business channel and skill set and redesigning how they are working in that industry or delivering that service or operating that business, or are more of them completely pivoting to something new? Does that make sense, the way I'm asking that question?
Definitely. And it is a little bit of both, because the audience that I help with, the corporate professionals, for example, they're a clean slate. These are the people I love helping because they haven't yet been tainted by the burnouts in entrepreneurship. So they're starting from fresh, and I have this opportunity to go, let's build it right, the first time, instead of what I did, right? And built this monster that was a Frankenstein of a business that I didn't want to service after a number of years. And so those people are building a little bit more intentionally with me because they're starting from scratch and going, how do I want, if I'm building a job for myself and leaving corporate, I better be building something more meaningful, right? And something that I actually want to show up for. Then on the other side, I do work with existing business owners, people that already started a small business. And it all depends on the industry, of course, right? If I work mainly with service-based professionals, so I don't work with sort of physical brick and mortar businesses as much, although I have in the past. Majority of them are service-based professionals, right? And some of them, depending on the opportunity, and that's why it's very individual coaching, because there's not a one size fits all strategy, right? For certain clients that have existing businesses, there are some, and part of what I do in the beginning is try to seek out what are some of the low hanging fruits that are available to them. Right? Sometimes they pivot not based on what they're offering, they pivot on how they market, because actually their partnership channels are much stronger during this time, And for others, it might be a focus on if they have 2 or 3 different core audiences, there's a particular audience that will move faster during this time, So they're going to invest more time in gaining more customers in that section of the market, and maybe still being generous, and educating this other part of their market to prepare them, to make a move down the road, right? So every business might have different opportunities, different sort of low-hanging fruit. But ultimately, what ties all the business together, and I think the motivation to potentially work with me and do some of the philosophies that I believe in, is that these people are tired of just putting more on their plate. Right? And they want to get better at making decisions. They want to get better at also making a decision that is aligned with what they're actually have their genius zone around, because it's very easy, especially with things like marketing, to want to be on all the different platforms, right? They all work in some way, Like I remembered investing a whole year on trying to learn Facebook ads and realize that's just not really my cup of tea. And I'm kind of I'm an old school, relationship girl. I am all about partnerships, real conversations like this, rather than the algorithm marketing, that I always felt like I was having a hernia or something after I did a training on that and trying to implement. It's like, it's just not my genius zone. And what if I actually spend that time on something I was good at, and that's, I think, what business owners are wanting, is that I'm motivated to work on my business. I'm a hard worker, but I want to work on things that are going to feel simple for me. That's not going to feel like pulling teeth. And it's also what's going to help my clients really recognize the way I do business, because I think during the pandemic, people have been asking for different things. So before, it might be faster things, right? Like, when can I learn something faster, and how can I hack this and hack that? And now people, want intimacy. They want community. They want human connection, because we're lacking a lot of that. And so the business I've been working with is more about, instead of automating everything and scaling in that capacity, how do we actually infuse intimacy, right? And let intimacy be our brand flavor right now, so that people feel taken care of, people feel like they can trust us, and we have that credibility to bring people through to our work, and not just think about how fast can I get a lead, or how fast can I put them into a funnel and trap them there,
Right.
and instead just have real conversations, and so that's been really interesting for business owners I've been working with, to sort of not only adapt to what people need at this very moment, but also take a look and go, well, this might be something I want to continue doing, because it's building loyalty. And there's real value in loyalty than just a $5 lead from a Facebook ad at times. That customer is a lifelong lead just because you actually picked up the phone and called them, rather than put them into an automated funnel. So it's been very interesting, this mindfulness to adapt to changing times, adapting our skill sets to serve different parts of our audience where it's needed. And ultimately, how do we lead from our strengths? How do we lead from our values and our personality types, so that we're doing things in our wheelhouse and making business feel easier for us rather than against us?
I'm also hearing relationships over transactions from you.
Totally.
Right. And it was interesting. I just read an article the other day about a car salesman in maybe Detroit, who is one of the top car salesmen in the state, and how he increased his business during the pandemic by being a resource, by being a consultant, by doing things that were not transactional, by being part of the community, by going out and making sure that his dealership was part of the effort to provide and get people to donate PPE, so that then they could redistribute it. And he talked about how doing those things took care of the business without him being a salesman, being a partner, being a friend, being a consultant, being an advisor. And he focused on those issues, and I thought it was very interesting. And I'm hearing some of those same things from you. How did you know? You mentioned your burnouts. Your corporate burnout, and then your personal burnout as a business owner. How did you know that you were burnt out, that you needed to make that change? How? Because this is, the whole idea, the cliche of do what you love. Yeah, great. But even a job you love some days is just work. Okay.
Agreed.
It's not a playground. And there is some monotony and some drudgery and some repetition and all of that. So how did you know that you were at a point where you needed to make a constructive change in what you were doing and how you were doing it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And to be honest, I don't think I knew right away, because I'm someone that has a very high tolerance for pain. As someone, as I said, as a high achiever, as someone that, comes from a cultural background. We were immigrants in Canada. We had to work very hard to make something of ourselves in a new world. It's been instilled in my conditioning that to get what I want, I have to work twice as hard as everybody else, right? And that's been something I've been...
Bring home a bee in an Asian household and see what happens.
Oh, bring home an A minus, and that is a problem, you know? And so that's been something interesting that I've had to navigate of where did that come from? Where did I learn that? And it wasn't always just about me seeing other people in business. It was my own upbringing and so forth. So yes, I didn't realize right away I was burning out. I usually, and the same thing happened to me in corporate and in my business, is that it literally had to take me out. I literally, my physical body responded in a very negative way. And the same thing happened to me in corporate. I had a very horrible health scare on a business trip in Moscow, in Russia, for me to be taken out, for me to then wake up and realize. Now, with my business, I think it happened a little bit earlier on. And I think, you know, going through self-improvements and things like that for the last few years allowed me to acknowledge that I was feeling burnt out before it went too far, you know. But part of the signs were that I was, to be honest, having a hard time getting up in the morning, you know, to actually feel motivated to want to approach my work. The other part was just the things that I valued in my real life, my personal life, was secondary, was on the wayside, you know. And I could see, you know, kind of what Joseph said, the wife, right? Like saying, hello, we're not doing this anymore. I had that happen with my partner, right? And my family and my friends. And that was, again, something that I had to listen to, or just how I was showing up for other people felt really impatient, felt really, you know, short and curt. And, you know, I was at my capacity of energy that I had nothing to give to other people in my real life. And that was something I felt very sad about, actually, because I very much value friends and family. And, you know, that's the hard part, is dealing with sometimes that shame, which is hard to come out of, but also going, well, I'm glad I know so that I can make those changes and not let the feelings of guilt and shame consume me, because that's not helpful, right? And I think ultimately, you know, when I looked at my business, I really felt that it felt full. There was no space to create. It was very operational day to day. And it was really a lot focused on marketing and bringing more clients in and having bigger numbers and all these sorts of things. And when I really looked at it, these big numbers, it was also to afford my team, to afford my staff. And then I went, wait a second, what if I didn't have such a big team? What if I didn't need that revenue, because that number was something I kept increasing every year, but didn't have purpose to really increase? If I really thought about it, what does my life really cost? What is important to me? Yes, money is important. And it's, you know, I absolutely want to make money in my business. But what's also important to me is time, the asset of time, you know, that we forget about, that's so intangible, and something that we, you know, it's an age-old thing, right? You can't buy happiness with money. And a lot of us crave more time. That's one thing we can't control. We age, we get, you know, our parents, our children age, right? We want to, you know, leverage the time we have with them. And it's a cliche, but it is true. You know, I wasn't having that time to actually enjoy my life, enjoy the fruits of my labor, which is my business. And that's when I thought, you know, this is insane, because I'm working towards something that isn't bringing me to a life experience I really want to have. So I have to reverse engineer what that looks like to adjust myself. But that part was, you know, two really important questions for me was, what is actually enough? That is a hard question to answer, because in the business world, they tell you more is more. You made 100 grand this year. Well, you should make 200 grand next year, right? Like, it's what they drive you to do, right? So you lose yourself in that achievement. More is more. I want to be bigger to prove myself in some way. And right, like we don't know what that enough number is. What is enough for my life? And then the secondary thing is, how do I define success beyond just a business that pays the bills? What else do I need from my business? You know, and that part for me is I want to enjoy my work again, because I was doing a lot more things like courses and a lot more automated products, and, you know, sometimes not having as much intimacy because I was scaling in that way. I actually felt out of touch, you know, with my coaching. I felt out of touch with my craft because I wasn't coaching as deeply anymore. It became this product beyond me, and it took my interest out of my own vocation, if you will. You know, so these were kind of the certain things that I had to evaluate to kind of bring more life back, you know, to my business, and minimize what had been causing the busy work in order to create that spaciousness, you know, that my business needs and I need.
I'm going to tell you, I think I'm going to have to schedule some calls with you, because you're So much of what you have said, I've experienced in the past. The I built that was the alligator that I now had to feed. And the alligator is voracious and it just keeps you, the more you put in, the more it wants. So I get that. And I'm sure there are thousands of people out there that are feeling and experiencing the same exact thing right now. Add COVID on top of that, add the economy, add politics, add all that on top. And it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I just keep doing what I've been doing the whole time and do it more, do it harder, do it faster. And hopefully everything works out. Well, that might not be the answer. So I wish we had way more time, and we're coming to the end of our time, unfortunately, because I try.
We'll need a part 2 episode.
Well, and you know what? I was going to say that I would love to have you back on the program when, in a month or so. And maybe we pick a particular topic that we can talk about that will help us really break it down, because this is an onion that as you peel this onion, it's a lot of layers. A lot of layers here. And so
I'd love to hear some stories, some case studies, if you will.
Absolutely.
I think that's a great idea, Joseph.
Yeah. Well, so we'll do that.
I'd love to.
And we do have those guests that we go, you know what, we got to have you on again, because there's so much there. But I wanted to kind of bring it to a close and say, so you've rebuilt this business. You're helping people rebuild theirs. What are some of the tiny but mighty business mindsets that you now have? And give me just 2 or 3 of them, because I want to try and finish up, but I need to have those from you.
Yeah. So I remember, if you remember when I was talking about what took a lot of time in my business in the different engines, right? The wheels that need to be in motion. One of the biggest things I spent a lot of time in that made me feel more like a marketer than actually a coach was marketing, and that is a non-negotiable for most businesses, but I was turning into an internet marketer than I was being a coach. And that's what did not sit well with me for a long time. It felt like I have to do it versus I want to do it. And we all know what the difference is. Yeah. And so that was the first thing I had to really unpack for myself, because I knew it was taking so much of my time, my effort, and I know it's non-negotiable. So one of the tiny things but mighty things that I really think about in marketing is I went back to really just taking inventory, of what were some of the marketing activities that I enjoyed. Because sometimes when we think about marketing in this world, this new technology-driven world, we always think about online technology, techie style marketing, right? Because that's sort of what's being peddled and what is kind of feels like a holy grail of like, if we get that right, we're just going to get a whole mass of automated leads constantly. It feels like a dreamy world. But the truth is, there might be some other marketing efforts that actually might be better for your personality type, like me, who is a more people person, that actually can, showcase your work in a much more powerful way. So I decided that instead of being on multiple platforms and thinking so much about content creation and, what I needed to do to drive more of an audience, I really picked where are my assets that are existing that I actually can be better at and much more engaging on, that can give more value to these people in these areas that I already have. So the first thing was my email list. And that's the one thing I actually really own. The rest of everything on social media, I just don't, right? You really just own your email list. And so really actually giving a crap about engaging these people in a manner that I don't do in my social media, where it's really reserved for these people who I call my inner circle community. That's given me their email, which is a privilege, to land on someone's inbox is a privilege. And if they continue to listen, we want to give them something, right? Like much more insightful, much more behind the scenes about what I'm doing in my business. I've been sharing a lot more of the unsexy side of businesses, and what I've been doing and what I've been failing at and making mistakes on, which I think has been more refreshing, to learn rather than I can do no wrong. And I'm the guru you should listen to, which is not my cup of tea either. So I've been really focused on that. And that's been a tiny move, right? That has caused a really big return on loyalty, commitment, and these people who have already been nurtured for many years is my gold mine, rather than trying to convince, right, a stranger on the internet to buy my stuff. Let's deal with my family. Let's deal with my inner circle people. So that's one way I've been kind of double downing on my own assets. And then the other part for marketing is I love things like this, where I get to talk to real humans in real time. And also partners that are really like me, where we're not afraid to talk about things that are difficult and hard, rather than just talk about success stories and how great our businesses are and how much money we're making. I'm not interested in that conversation. There's a million of other people that will do that. So I've been really mindful about partnering it. And that's why I love talking to you, Joseph. I mean, we had like an hour and a half conversation even before a podcast recording, which we should have probably recorded, was this alignment, of like, yeah, we both have businesses and it'll be great for us to co-partner, but also we believe in these values that ground us to how we might make decisions. And I think choosing the right partners, and building ourselves up together with the right people, have been also an initiative I've been taking a lot. And that's been wonderful, to know that I'm not alone in this business. I'm not alone in this approach, in this out view of what I want to achieve in my life and business. And that has been my way to kind of, get my business out there and position it in a different way, rather than focus on the metrics, these other unhealthy metrics of likes and followers and lead generation tactics that, don't get me wrong, do work, but I just can't quantify that in value for me. Mine are about, the deep conversations I get to have, the transformation I get to witness in a long-term client rather than brand new clients all the time. So, these are kind of small ways I've maintained my own passion, my own interest in my own business. And I think in return, it's also allowed my clients to differentiate me perhaps from other people that might treat their audience as something like just a number, but they are really a community member.
And you are uniquely different in a very good way because of the depth that you bring to the relationship. I hear people all the time.
Thank you.
Do this and do that, and they're pounding and they're yelling and they're crazy, and they're the crazy Eddie of social media. If you remember crazy, you can buy this thing, it's on sale. And that's not my style. I'm much more subtle than that. I love the word you use, intimacy. I built my company on client intimacy. I want to know about you. I want to know what your strengths and weaknesses are. I'll share mine, you share yours, and together we'll figure out how to be stronger and better together. So I think that's a great piece to end on. And if you'd like to, I'd like for Lydia, for you to just encapsulate in a couple of sentences what you'd really like people to leave with today from this conversation.
Well, hopefully this conversation has sparked, some questions that we might want to challenge in our lives and our business. And what a better time to do this when the entire global world is on a pause. And instead of waiting to react, a lot of times as we, as Ike was saying, it's his busy time, right? In the Q4 of 2020, we're having this mode of like, I got to get ready. What's 2021 going to look like? How do I adapt to 2021? And, we're worrying a lot about what the legislations will be and who the new, is the new president going to be in there by January? What's going to change in business laws, right? All these things we're trying to imagine and react to in 2021. And so maybe my challenge for everybody who's listening is, instead of being reacting, how do we kind of be more proactive in what we want to create despite what is happening externally? What do we have control over? We have no control over when these laws and, when the vaccine will be available, when we'll be allowed to be out again, and when we don't have to wear masks in a pool anymore, right? We don't have control over that. But what do we have control over now that we will always would have brought into 2021 anyway, despite what is going on the outside? And I think if we can move our attention to that, then we're going to feel a lot more in control. And we do need to feel in control in uncertain times to feel grounded again. But we got to choose where we actually have a capacity to do so, right? So whether that might be to actually look at your business right now, if there are ways or you've had hints and clues that you are at the verge of burnout, you are at the verge of doing too many things. What a great quarter. Last quarter of the year is always a great wrap up. What did I learn this year? What has the things that I've been doing taught me to realize that I may not want to do anymore? Where are my areas of my business that causes me angst versus, the joy? And yes, like Ike says, we do have moments that we have to do some mundane work. But mundane work is really different than that type of work that forces you to not be yourself, or, that forces you to stay up till 3 a.m. doing something, right? That's a very different kind of work that is costing you more than just a couple minutes of boredom to put a blog post up because it's not really your cup of tea, right? Like there's a difference in that feeling. And then where's that heaviness, right? Where's the heaviness of that feeling in your business? And sometimes you might be surprised. It might not be operations. It might just be the way that, like what I was doing, micromanaging people, not trusting people in doing certain jobs because I've hired too junior of staff rather than specialists, right? Could be small adjustments that could be a domino effect actually in how we might run our business. But I think having a neutral position, just kind of going, let's not be attached to outcomes. Let's not be judgmental with what we've done. Let's not have regrets, but let's just take stock. Like it's almost like being an analyst, a little, put on your detective hat and treat your business as a separate entity and just open the hood and take a look and see what are some areas that we might improve on for next year.
Thank you for that. That it is an amazing, powerful way to end this conversation that will continue maybe next month, because I love your message. I love your passion. I love your energy, but I love your deep commitment to helping people realize more in their lives and in their businesses. It's an amazing you have. So thank you. Ike, any closing words from you for Lydia or for our guest? Oh, you're on mute.
I think Lydia's given us a lot to think about, and we've covered a lot that applies to both professionals and executives and business owners on how to move forward in more ways than one. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. This was a great conversation.
Well, thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I even have a page of notes here, things I need to reflect on. And we talk about that, and we'll close with this. All of these things that we're capable of in these directions that we would need to follow to accomplish something different in our lives, not necessarily more, but something different, is going to start with reflection. It's going to start with, as you say, taking stock, taking inventory. People go all the time, and they never really stop. Just wait a minute. Let me think about this. Is this really where I want to go? Is this really the way I want to get there? Is this really who I want to get there with? And when you reflect, when you take a moment and talk about the very first chapter in my new book, The Leader of You, is about self-reflection, leadership reflection. How are you doing? What's important to you? And I think that's a really important message. And for all of our listeners today, please take a moment, stop, reflect, take an inventory, ask yourself, am I really happy doing what I'm doing? And maybe it isn't changing what you're doing, but maybe it's changing the way you're doing it. Or maybe it's changing why you're doing it, or who you're doing it with. So there could be all kinds of different layers to talk about. But in the end, the business in the new normal is all about how do we move forward in this environment and future environments, because even the old normal is going to be a new normal when we get back to it, because it's different. There's going to be some things that are not ever going to be the same ever in our lives, and then there's going to be some new things. So it's exciting time. It's an amazing time that we're all living in. And so take advantage of this information that Lydia has shared with us today. Take stock, go through some of those things, reach out to her. By the way, I know that there's some things, Lydia, that you could help people with. We're going to have your contact information on a slide at the end of this so people can reach out to you directly. We encourage that. We support that. There's enough for all of us to share and to ask. Is there anything else you wanted at this point? Anything that you'd like to say about them reaching out to you, or an offer you might have, or anything?
Yeah, they can. I mean, my website's the best place to kind of find everything. I think a good place to start, especially to do with this conversation, talking about building our business to fit our life rather than the other way around. One of the best resources to start with is something called how to launch a business you love, and specifically a business designed from your strengths, your values, and your personality. And I run a free training on that. It's really intimate. It's kind of a masterclass. It's very in depth. So it's definitely get a notepad out and get some notes, because it's not just information. I really take you through the process of how to really think about the different parts of your business and how you show up for your business. That's going to allow you to feel happier, right? In a meaningful business model that is right for you. And that one you can find at screwthecubicle.com/launch-business. And I'll give you the link for it. But that's a really good place to start, because it's if you want to get to know my philosophies and my concepts around how I take a look at micro businesses and how do we take a look at how we show up for that business, that would be a great resource to start. And then on YouTube is where I have my show every week. It's just type in Screw the Cubicle, you'll find me. There are playlists for people who are transitioning from corporate. There's a playlist for people that are just starting a business for the first time and going, what kind of business should I start? And then there's also, videos for people who are already in an existing business, and how do we uncomplicate and simplify the way we do business so that we can actually enjoy our time and enjoy our lives as well in conjunction with it.
Okay, so it's screwthecubicle.com. It is. right?
That's right.
Cubicle.com. Don't forget that, everybody. So with that, I'm going to say thank you so much to our guest, Lydia Lee, to my co-host, Ike Devji, and I'm Joseph Rosales. And thank you so much for joining us. It was a great conversation, and be safe. Bye-bye.